So, hi everyone, I'm here with Gavin Stewart today. He's the channel sales manager for VCC Live, and you're in the sort of like the cloud-based contact solutions space, based in Europe, but doing work all over. And I think you do quite a bit of work in the collection space as well. So Gavin, thanks very much for
Well,
joining me.
thank you for the invitation, Chris. Pleasure to be here. Yeah, and we have a lot of customers in that collection space, not solely there, but a lot of customers in the collection space, outbound related projects.
So I suppose to start off, it'd be interesting just to hear what are some of the things you're hearing in terms of clients, in terms of what there is feedback in terms of some of the processes and how they're changing, and really across some of the different markets that you work as well. I mean, what are some of the themes that you're coming across when you're chatting with them?
There's a lot of customers obviously talking about AI, machine learning. How's that going to affect them? So that's maybe we'll talk about that more as we go through this. A lot of customers looking at multiple channels. So they have some sort of channels, but they want to increase those channels. Perhaps it's generational, or they want to include some kind of chat application, WhatsApp or Viber, depending on what country you're in. Notification solutions, that's also multi-channel. How can that be improved? How we can reach more people? Some interesting ones like customers want to integrate, they have mobile applications that the customer uses. They have push notifications that the customers are familiar with. How could they combine that into the overall story? So authentication, there's many areas that customers are focused on. And let's not maybe ignore the elephant in the room. A lot of them are looking for the very best predictive dialer that they can get to meet their own needs.
Do you find that changes by all the different markets? So you're in lots of different markets. Do you find that sort of like that flavor kind of changes? Is there like a market theme, or is it more of an industry theme in terms of adopting some of these new technologies? Like, for example, moving away from pure telephony to more digital type forms, or sticking with, say, for example, predictive dialers as well, so where it becomes more popular in some markets further than others, or is it more industry based?
I think it is fair to say that there is regional or territorial differences. That's true. That is true. Maybe it's adoption of new technology, but everybody's at least thinking about it. I think if we took the multi-channel, omni-channel aspect, most customers are thinking about it at the very least. More are adopting it in certain countries than in other countries, perhaps, or maybe it's a generational. Who's their audience? If their audience is perhaps younger, maybe they need to be more familiar, more keen on adopting new channels or new capabilities. So it does depend, but I do think it is fair to say that certain countries are quicker to adopt the omni-channel solutions, quicker to be looking at AI solutions, looking for that competitive advantage, because they're seeing it in their own market. Their competitors are thinking about these things too.
Do you think? I mean, what drives it? Do you think is it what's reported in the local media, or do you think it's really driven by even by things like social media these days, which is much more like global? What do you think drives the change of behavior?
I think that there can be things that are off the moment that has the buzz, like the AI. Certainly that's got the buzz. Everybody's talking about AI and thinking about how that's going to play. But there are other things that I think are just more in the industry that is pressure. They're seeing the competitors doing it, like multiple channels.
Yeah.
Maybe they feel that they have to. There's something that is being missed out, opportunity. So that's a business reason. Or there could be other reasons. There could be compliance reasons, new compliance rules, regulations, depending on which particular market they're in or which particular industry. Banking's more strict than others. So yeah, there could be all kinds of pressures there. But there's the buzz in the industry, the fear of losing out. But everybody wants to improve the efficiency of their business. They want to collect more. They want to. We've all got our pressures on our businesses, but it does vary. It does vary.
Yeah, and I suppose talking about pressures, cost pressures seem to be coming up at the moment, at least anyway. I mean, is that a big driving? What are some of the pressures that are? Because the other one that can take place, particularly in the collections piece, is either collections rates or trying to improve top line performance in terms of euros collected, or it might be in terms of like bad debt if you're in one of the creditors as well. I mean, what you're hearing, is it a cost element?
There is a cost element to it. I think that is true to say. But there's a lot of competition out there. A lot of competition for business. They're not sole parties collecting them, so they're competing against their own rivals out there. But I do think that there's a cost aspect to this that is very significant. People looking for how can I whatever KPIs. They're all measuring different KPIs, and But let's go back to the predictive dialer. Can I reach more candidates?
Mm,
Here's a little thing just came up recently. A lot of customers now are affected by the end customer believing it's a scam or call fraud.
mm,
So they're reluctant to do anything, the
mm,
end customer, because there's a pressure that we have to find a way to address. They feel that that it could potentially be a scam, yet
mm,
it's not. So how can we address that? That's
mm.
affecting the whole business. All kinds of pressures from different angles here.
Yeah. And you talked about that was the dialer there and telephony and those kind of things. What would you draw the arc in terms of popularity of contact channels? So dialer and telephony has been around for a while. It feels like some of the digital channels are coming up, but it doesn't feel like it's all one or the other. It feels like it's both these days. I
Yeah.
mean,
And an interesting thing is a lot of customers using multiple channels at the same time.
mm,
I'm talking to an end customer, and I'm also going to send them some details by email, or
yeah.
I'm going to send you a link by SMS. So I'm going to enhance that experience. I'm going to reinforce something, but I'm using multiple channels at the same time. Or I start on one channel and I finish on another channel. That's another aspect. From our perspective, I would say voice is still king. Now,
Yeah.
voices of that outbound dialing, that's still king, but it's combined with other things. SMS is widely used.
Mm,
Um, Outbound IVR, so robocalling, that's also used. We see that used. But that person-to-person thing is important, that emotional connection with the end customer in the collections we see. But it's enhanced by others. And we see customers keen to look at chat options. So
mhm.
that might be the likes of, depending on your country, your territory, might be WhatsApp, might be Viber, might be whatever. And there's regulations around them from the vendors as well. But a lot of companies looking to use those chat applications to enhance. They're probably already using the likes of email and SMS now,
Mm.
but they want to enhance that. And then there's the whole notifications aspect as well. So we want to have a broad range of notifications to the end customer that something's happened or something's due or whatever, and the most appropriate way to do that. So there's a range of channels being used for those notifications as well.
Yeah, it's almost like I'm always reminded whenever I have these conversations is we get very excited about digital channels or the latest tech that's out there, but the reality is like telephony is still a massively important channel for a lot of folks, right? And it's almost like it's what you're saying. It's not like that's gone away. It's not like it's going away. It's just being
No.
augmented by these other digital channels on top, and
Yes,
it's becoming very blended, really.
I think that's a very fair comment, Chris. I think you need maybe you've got you've got a very emotional end customer on the call. You need that person to person.
Mm.
Very often that could be. But on the other hand, you might be looking at you've got some early debts that you're trying to collect versus some late and harder debts. So there might be a different strategy. We see customers doing that, making the differentiation between how they approach those early ones versus the later ones, the harder ones. So there's a difference of strategy there as well.
How do we start thinking about the omni-channel piece? Because it's very easy as humans for us to get into, it's almost like this binary thinking. It's either digital or it's either telephony. So, it's late stage complicated. It's all going to be telephony and it's all going to be digital early stage or whatever it is. How should we think about that? So because it sounds like it's not quite as binary as we like to make it
No.
to a certain extent. How do we think about that? And then particularly then, how do we start to coordinate that in terms of making sure we're doing the right things at the right time?
I think you need the broad range of channels that are
Mm,
appropriate for whatever space you're in,
mm,
and you need to combine those together.
mm,
I think you're going to see a lot of customers. We see it starting off with one channel, so maybe they start off in some sort of chat channel, and then that moves into something else. So that moves into another channel. So maybe it's done in parallel. Or like I previously mentioned, we're speaking to a customer, but we're able to provide them additional information, additional ways for them to consider things or slides or whatever it might be, some kind of
mm,
additional material via another channel at the same time. So that
Mm.
combination of channels is important. So we're seeing escalation from one channel to another, and we're seeing the combination of channels as well as being very important. And then finally finishing, rounding off that contact with the end customer with, I'm going to send you an SMS and that's going to confirm this, or I'm going to send you an email and that's going to confirm all the details. You've got it, dear Mr. and Mrs. Customer, you've got all the details in
Mm.
email that's in your email box right now. You can, a very efficient fashion, combine all these things together to make the best customer. It's a difficult experience collecting perhaps debt, but we can make it a better experience for those end customers by doing it in a very professional way and providing them all the information that the end customer needs.
I really like the idea of almost like that cool close, and then how do you use multiple channels in the cool close, right, to give a better experience, to get confirmation, to provide information, transparency, and those kind of things. And that seems particularly effective a way of doing that in a more cost-effective way as well, and sort of in a reassuring kind of way in particular.
Yeah, I think you can provide a better customer experience.
Yeah.
You maybe got a customer that's emotional, sensitive, and we can deal with that in a good way.
What about that first stage in terms of like contact strategy, and particularly around engagement? What are you hearing there in terms of some of the latest thinking around like how to engage people on that, almost like that first touch? I mean, and it's around contacting them, yes, connecting with them, but it's also around how do you get them to actually what would have been pick up the phone as sort of right party contact, but actually get them to engage with you and start to get them to come back and actually have that conversation to begin the discussion.
Well, one of the ways you could do that is with AI.
Mm.
So AI, we're very good. Technologically speaking, we're very good at transcribing calls. So that means you can assist an agent.
Mm.
So we have this real live agent experience dealing with the end customer, but we can assist them. Or you got the opposite of that. You got a brand new agent. We want to assist them as well. But anyway, we can provide in real time insights. How do they handle objections? What to say, what not to say. So when provide that through the scripting experience. We find that's very important for customers. The script that they follow, they've got to do it we've got to authenticate that end customer. We've got compliance things that we have to address. But we want to do it in the best way possible. And we can use some of these new technologies to assist that agent. We still need the human element, but we're going to make their job. We're going to hopefully remove some of the mundane bits of it as well for the agents and let them focus in on finding that thing that's going to make the difference with the end customer.
Yeah, the whole AI space has been a whirlwind, hasn't it, over the last sort of like 18 months. When you think about it, it's almost like it felt like it came out of nowhere. It didn't, but it felt like it came out of nowhere, and it's been this like whirlwind. But it's also changed over the last 12 months, or even the last 6 months, in terms of the flavors and how it's been implemented, those kind of things. And I know there's a lot of buzz around it, but what are you seeing as being the main use cases? And maybe the use cases last year might be different to this year because capability keeps improving as well. So like
Absolutely.
Call transcriptions one as well, like predictive kind of knowledge bases is another. What are you seeing? What are people asking for, and what don't they know about that they need to know about that could really be beneficial for them?
Yeah, I think there's two camps right now. There's the assist the agent, the knowledge-based objection handling, providing insights to that agent as they go along. So that's one aspect. You've also got to assist the supervisor. So we can't ignore the supervisor in this space or the quality management team, but we can assist them. So, for example, everybody's doing quality management, and practically everybody's doing quality management of some sort. Maybe that's spot checking. It's very common. We do spot checks throughout the business. Now with AI, we got the tools, the technological tools to quality monitor everything, every call. So we can guarantee, are we being compliant? Are we following the processes? We can spot things that, why is somebody being more effective than somebody else? Why is somebody less effective? We can drill down, but in the whole. So now we can take quality. You'll still have to do quality management, I think, with real people, because there's certain things that need to be discovered from human point of view. But we can do sentiment analysis. There's many things that can be done right now. So I would say that these are things that you can do in the short term. Look at assisting the agent in different ways. Talked about some of those, and look at the supervisor. What can we do to assist the supervisor's experience? Again, the trend here is let's, if we can, remove the mundane things, the repetitive things. If AI or machine learning or whatever you want to call it can assist with that, and if we can perhaps integrate it, some sort of automation to integrate business applications into this as well at the same time, even better.
Yeah. And where do you think it's going to go forward? There's been a lot of talk around AI agents, which is essentially like a more sophisticated sort of, like, we used to call them robots. Remember that,
Yes.
robotic process automation. It feels like that's where the noise is in terms of what's coming down the pipe. Where do you think we go? Where do you think we go next? What's over the horizon that we've got to look out for? Because we've got some very practical use cases today, but where does it evolve to, do you think?
Well, there's a lot of development looking at these virtual agents. Personally, my own view, in the shorter term, I think we need real people to deal with end customers that may be rather emotional or sensitive to the situation. I think we need that human element. Not saying things are moving so fast. Who knows? You can go view demos on the internet of these virtual agents, but I think we can assist those. But I think also a factor we need to perhaps consider is the use of AI in the future we're doing predictive dialing. So let's say we could predict in a better way. And AI is looking at all this data across different business applications, across the contact center, across whatever information resource. And it's making a decision that this is a better candidate. This is a better person to call at this point for reasons X or Y. So that could be very interesting, because then you can start to, if AI is picking the right people to call at the right time. As vendors, we have tools within the solution that allow a customer to segment. Let's say they're doing predictive dialing. So they want to segment the campaign callees in some way, by age, by date due, by whatever, pick your geography, pick whatever. Now, AI could play their part there in helping to segment that. And then really that could make a difference to the business.
It does feel like the richness of data seems to be increasing exponentially as well, even in terms of like telephony, and so like this whole sort of transcription element just adds even more data that you can then use to do more segmentation.
Yes, think of it. You as a business, you probably got a load of data from the contact center solution. All the vendors are providing lots of data for supervisors that need to get into the gory detail, but there are gems in there. You've got AI perhaps looking at this. The customer's got some sorts of business applications. So how are they going to do that? They probably want to pull it into some BI tools, Google Looker or Microsoft BI, or be it whatever. So they want to pull that in. So you got different peoples that are consuming this data. You got the supervisors that need the gory detail at times. You got the overall business, the management that want to see that BI view. You got a whole range of parties here with different things that they're looking for. There's lots of information there, but how do you make sense of it? There's the challenge.
And if you look at a lot of concern, particularly with AI amongst like call center staff, as an example, and particularly right at the beginning of it, there was a lot of resistance around adopting some of this new technology. What do you think the role of a contact center employee is going to change into? Because it doesn't feel like it's going to go away. It feels like it's going to change in the sort of like the nature of it, in terms of what you were saying. What does the future look like in terms of the roles that we're going to need in contact centers?
That's a big question, Chris. That's a tricky one. I think we're going to see many things coming. But my own personal view, I think you need that human to human bit, particularly in certain industries or segments. You're going to need that human to human element. But I think the agent's role is important, because they're that human face to this whole process. I think we can make their role a little bit more interesting. We can hopefully remove the repetitive tasks, the mundane tasks, to free them up to do the things that are more interesting, the more difficult, but provide them ways and tools to do that. But I think their role will become maybe more specialized, more interesting. From our perspective, we want to make people more efficient, more productive. That's the goal of our solution, ultimately. But we want to do that in a way that provides better. It has many factors here. Increase the customer satisfaction, but remove the repetitiveness from the agents. Now, the agent doesn't want to do the same thing for 500 times a week. If we could remove some of that, then they could use their skills to better address those end customers' needs, find those solutions quicker, and reach a better solution for all parties.
Yeah.
All the parties, maybe if we can find a better way to collect that debt, it might be better for all parties.
Yeah, and the one thing we didn't chat about actually around technology was that it's the less stuff that sort of happens in the back end in terms of cloud-based systems, for example, or ease of configuration and those kind of things. And we don't really talk about that often in a lot of these discussions or in conferences. But that's been a massive benefit for a lot of companies in terms of being able to configure the system differently, be able to make different changes quickly as well.
Like, to give you an example, scripting.
Yeah.
So most contact centers, they have some kind of script and data sheets that they use for the agents to deal with those end customers. Doing that to help the new agents, doing that to ensure compliance. But you can shave seconds. A well-defined script can shave seconds off the whole exercise. These are just simple things that can be part of it. So I think that there's many areas that the benefits can be drawn from. Many factors there. For example, I like my solution, the company I work for, VCC Live, it's a cloud-based solution. So the cloud-based solution brings its own range of benefits. Some customers might be using on-prem, some customers might be using cloud-based solutions, but cloud-based solutions come with their benefits. Evergreen solution, all those capabilities are going to be there in the solution. An elastic solution, flex up, flex down as the year goes through. So many factors there that can help businesses.
And what are you seeing in the market, I suppose, in terms of using some of the data, processing some of the data that gets kicked off, or using some of this new capability? Like, how do firms manage the complexity? Because yes, you're getting a lot of extra functionality. It's probably a lot less complex than it would be if you were to be doing it manually the old way, but there's still more moving parts, right? And the extra capability allows us to manage more moving parts and get more data. How do you see companies almost organize around that to make the most effective use of it? And what's the best kind of strategy?
But that's, again, a good question. A good question, Chris. There's a lot of data there. Yeah, there's a lot of data in a cloud solution from all the vendors. They can provide a lot of data, but that's not the only data. You've got data coming from business applications. So the benefit would be to combine those. And I think BI tools, that I mentioned this previously, that has a role to play to combine this thing and to visualize it. There are other things that maybe yourself you've got experience in with scorecards and how does AI play into this? So AI is going to have a role. It's going to be able to consume this data and crunch it into perhaps more meaningful ways as well. So there's no shortage of data. How do you use that data in the best way possible? Given the audiences, the supervisors in real life, the supervisors still have things where they have to take a whole bunch of raw data and import it into Excel and do their magic to find some critical issue, because maybe that's part of their role. But other parts of the business want to look at the overall picture.
Yeah, and I suppose it's just, do firms need to start thinking around investing in some of that capability? Because it can seem like a nice to have, but if you've got all this data and you're not looking at it, then you're not getting the value out of it as well. And is there a piece
do they have
where
IT teams to do it? How do they do it?
Yeah. Do we need to turn a corner in terms of thinking about how we invest in some of that stuff? What do you see that future capability coming up? And you've got all this flexibility with new systems, being able to change strategies online with like cloud-based solutions, those kind of things. But you've got to have some expertise to be able to invest, to be able to make the best use of that as well. How do the best firms think about that?
Maybe it depends on the size of those firms or the sophistication of some companies. Some companies might have BI skills. Maybe they got those Microsoft BI or Google Looker or whatever it is, BI skills, and they can do something with it themselves. Other companies may be slightly smaller, or don't have the same set of IT skills. They can go to, maybe vendors can help them, certainly. Systems integrators can help them. Partners can help them. But I do think there's a lot of very valuable data there that looked in the whole could provide extremely useful insights to businesses. If really from a business perspective, there's some really good information there, but it needs to be pulled together. No shortage of the raw data, pulling it together. I think the vendors themselves, that they're trying to provide this data in different ways, trying to create custom KPIs, allow the customer to really get specific for their own industry, the metrics that matter to them. But still, how do you look at that in the whole? That's a difficult question. And a lot of customers are going to need support from some other party.
Yeah. Okay, super interesting. I mean, I want to go back to the different markets, and one of the great things around the collections industry, but also looking across, being able to look across different markets, is almost like you get a sort of a microscope view around what's happening in a lot of the economies as well. So, like, well, the mood can often be indicative around what's happening in the economies. How do you see that in terms of like what the business sentiment is at the moment in the markets that you work in? Are we in that upbeat kind of mood, or is it more sort of like steady state? It feels like there's a lot of sort of turmoil going on at the moment.
Yeah, I think in some countries that there's a degree of turmoil.
Mm,
Maybe it depends on particular segments. For example, my own company, we have a lot of customers that are the end customers in the customer lending space.
mm,
So we see a lot of customers in that space. So that maybe the customer lending industry is different from a different
mm.
particular industry. So that there's a certain degree of variation there. Uh, I, Maybe upbeat in certain countries, less upbeat in other countries. That's
It's a
uh,
constant. It's a given.
yeah, it fluctuates.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't really know how to answer that better than it's fluctuating.
Now, I wanted to go completely off piece now. I was doing the research and I saw that obviously we're chatting on video and I have to edit this afterwards. So it's one of the things I do. And way back in your history, I think you had on your CV as being sort of like a video editor, right? Way back when you started. And I suppose I wanted to, I suppose, swap stories, if anything, in terms of like how do you think it's changed? And you must have seen it change. Actually, editing on video was way back then was manual, I would think. Just think about how the technology's changed from where we are then back then to where we are today, basically doing it live in different countries and then being able to almost kick it out and like pretty quickly. Just the perspective of like how that's changed it must be amazing.
Yes, well, I used to work for the BBC
Yeah,
many years ago. When I was doing video editing, this was when I joined the videotape department. This was
yeah,
1 inch wide tape. I
yeah,
was never there for 2 inch wide tape because
yeah,
my predecessors were editing on 2 inch wide tape, 50
yeah,
millimeter wide tape.
yeah,
So that's extraordinary to think of. But when I joined, it was 1 inch wide tape. Then we started to move to the other technologies, more cassette-based technologies from the Sonys of the world, the Panasonics. Then it moved to digital, and then I'm out of that industry. So if I think of how complex it was, we're doing a video call between two countries right now, and I think of my days in broadcasting and had to get lines up from country X to country Y, the complication of it, and now that's past. And we draw the comparison or the analogy between that development in the broadcasting engineering world versus the contact center world. You can see parallels. You
yeah,
can see
exactly.
how fast things have moved. It's certainly fascinating. And some of this new technology, maybe even moving faster. AI
Yeah.
seems to be changing every day. It's hard to keep up with it, for example.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember rotary dial phones and actually doing a tour of the local telephone exchange where they had the old manual analog telephone
Oh,
exchanges. I
tick, tick,
remember
tick, tick,
that.
tick, 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 tick.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
And you think about how that's changed over the last very many years. That the exchange closed down. It basically fit in a box. You can probably fit it on your something similar on in a very small box
Yeah,
on a computer these
servers
days,
now,
right? Right?
basically.
And that sort of thing is changing. And the technology then also then creates new processes or new ways of working and those sort of things. And like how it's been a real sort of massive evolution. It does feel like it's accelerating though. And the last sort of like 5 years seems to have gone a lot faster than the last, say, 10 years, as an example. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if that's your kind of perspective with your tech too.
lots of customers looking at cloud solutions for different things, for
Mm,
storage, for this, for that,
mm,
for whatever. It provides new capabilities, the flexibility.
mm,
But flexibility in terms of I need more agents at Christmas, I need less agents in February,
mm,
whatever it might be. But it's also technical, so
mm,
that's an interesting aspect as well. There's the certain elastic
mm,
capabilities where a customer needs to, if they have an on-prem solution, create it for a peak or near peak. Now you
mm,
can use a cloud provider and let
mm,
them deal with the peaks and provide you that elastic
mm,
aspect for a solution. So that one factor, but then the counter to that is we're being bombarded with new channels.
mm,
Now we will have to have chat channels and SMS and email and whatever else is going to be the latest new channel. Mobile phone
mm.
application integration, push notifications. How can you use those? authenticating end users? Is there developments that we can use biometrics? People are cautious about using biometrics. No shortage of new technologies to be considered, but how do they make a significant and worthwhile difference to a business?
Yeah, and I suppose kind of if I replay that back, you're getting excited around we get excited around the technology, but we've also got to think about the process, and then how does the technology fit into the process, and be open to these new ways of working and process design to then fit the technology, and the technology becomes an enabler for that.
Yes, imagine we could authenticate the end user in a better way, a more reliable way, a smoother way, better for the end customer, better for the business. That would be a good thing. That would speed things up.
Yeah.
If we had a greater confidence that we've really got the right party on the phone or the right party on the connection, that could be a very simple but very positive thing.
Yeah.
Just as an example.
Yeah, the whole thing's fascinating. So where do you think we go from here as we sit here at the start of 25? Where do we go from here? What do you see panning out for the next sort of like 3 to 5 years?
Again, personal view, I still see voice as a huge element.
Mm.
I see a lot of use of multiple channels. I think that's going to be very common. I could see the use of biometrics to help as a factor, not the only factor. If we think about it, in some countries it's like X number of factors have to be mother's maiden name and blah 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 blah. I think we could do this in a better way. So I see that multi-channel type experience that's going to happen. We've talked about AI at length. That certainly has a role to play. But I personally don't see the agents going away for the interesting part of the role. Maybe for the more mundane part of the role that today we have outbound IVRs. Maybe they're enhanced in other ways. So you're still being called, but it's a voice bot at the other side of that outbound IVR, and then you're taken to a real live agent thereafter.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of factors here that are going to come to play. But in my own view, real human to human contact, that's part of it. Always going to be part of it, but we can remove some of the mundane parts. We can increase efficiency. We can do things in a better way, certainly by using some of this modern technology and the things that we're seeing on the roadmaps ahead.
Yeah. So it feels like the way we think about our processes doesn't change. It's just like, how do we then get the best processes and use the technology to do that? But we're still going to need.
We got all this wonderful technology, but like you say, we have to use it to the benefit of the business. It has to make a business difference, and processes are key there. But I think that there are technologies that are very much going to affect those processes.
Yeah. And I suppose, the new technology can be more efficient as well. I think we should probably also say that as well. So, Gavin, thanks very much for making the time. I appreciate it. It's a fascinating topic, and actually there's a lot of myths around it as well. But the whole piece around telephony still being important, I think it's quite important, and I think we're going to see it for a fair time in the future. That's for sure. So appreciate making the time, and we'll definitely be watching this space for sure.
Thank you for the opportunity, Chris.
Wonderful. Thanks.